Let's get straight to Trey Yingst. He's live on the ground in Tel Aviv well, your day has been underway for a while, but as we get started, Trey, what should we know?
Yeah, Dana, good morning. You heard the general there saying that the Iranian regime is down 86% in their ballistic missile launching capabilities since day one of Operation Fury. Still, the Israelis are taking some incoming fire. We've seen interceptions overhead here in Tel Aviv, but the Israelis are also going on the offensive, striking new targets around the capital of Tehran and going after many of the air defense systems that are left near to the Iranian capital. A top spokesman for the Israeli military gave a new update about the war today, saying this.
100 hours of fighting behind us, the Israeli Defense Force is facing forward. We started strong and we continue strong. We operate according to the orderly fighting plan in tight coordination and cooperation with the U.S. Army. We still have many targets and goals. In the coming days, we will proceed with the operation stages. We will deepen the harm to the regime's arrays, and we will continue dismantling its capabilities until the existential threats to the state of Israel are removed.
With the war ongoing, there are now questions swirling in Iran about who's leading the country right now, with much of the leadership taken out in American and Israeli strikes. One name, Murtaza Khamenei, the son of the Ayatollah who was killed over the weekend, is said to be the man who will ultimately get the nod from the clerics that are left. We do understand he is a hardliner with deep ties to Iran's security forces. The streets of Tehran broadly empty today as civilians remain indoors. This campaign is expected to intensify in the days ahead. And top Iranian leadership that remains alive still threatening the United States.
They have officially declared war and have begun war. If anyone, through words or actions that align with the wishes of this criminal enemy, the United States and the Zionist regime, acts accordingly, they will be regarded as standing in the enemy's line. They must be dealt with according to revolutionary and Islamic principles applicable during wartime.
While the Israelis are looking east at Iran, they're also looking north at the Iran-backed Lebanese militant group Hezbollah that continues to launch cross-border attacks. We know Israeli forces are now in southern Lebanon. The Israeli army and air force hammering the Lebanese capital of Beirut, specifically the Dakhia neighborhood, a Hezbollah stronghold. And earlier today, in a span of 30 minutes, Iran and Hezbollah launched 2 joint attacks against Israeli civilians. Dana?
So 2 questions for you, Trey. One is that General Keane talked about the degradation of the Iranian capabilities. So this is day 4 or 5 as you look at it. Do you see that there where you are?
Absolutely. The Israeli public is bracing for more incoming fire ahead, but there's a real understanding they'll only have to deal with this incoming missile fire for a matter of days, maybe a week or more, until it is totally degraded. You also have the issue of Iranian attack drones that have been fired toward Gulf countries. Yesterday, I spoke with a source in U.S. Central Command who said 2,000 drones have been launched since the beginning of this operation by the Iranians, the majority of them shot down. Dana?
And the other thing I wanted to ask you is about the resolve of the Israelis, as you just alluded to. What I heard from a friend today, and thought I would just ask you if you're hearing the same, that they are resolved and that they have this incredible gratitude towards the United States.
Absolutely. The Israelis understand that war comes with a price, but it's a price that they're willing to pay. While Israelis are spending most of the days in bomb shelters or in safe rooms, they're thanking President Trump and Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for launching this operation. President Trump had a broader vision for peace in the region that started with the ceasefire inside Gaza and then ultimately developed the Board of Peace. But both Israeli and American officials agreed it was the Iranian regime being the last major hurdle towards stability in the region. And U.S. officials say that's why this operation is happening, to degrade Iran's ballistic missile capability, to take out their support of regional proxies, and ensure the regime never gets a nuclear weapon.
Trey Yingst, thank you so much, and I'll see you later throughout the day. General Jack Keane joins us now. Of course, he's a Fox News senior strategic analyst. Sir, I'll have you listen to Secretary Rubio, and this is what he said about more lethal strikes coming.
What's about to, you're about to see, we're going to unleash Cheng on these people in the next few hours and days. You're going to really begin to perceive a change in the scope and in the intensity of these attacks as, frankly, the 2 most powerful air forces in the world take apart this terroristic regime and defang it and take away its ability to threaten its neighbors or hide behind a zone of immunity that allows them to develop their nuclear ambitions.
And General, no doubt you saw General Keane and Secretary of War Pete Hegseth's briefing. Anything that you took away from that we should pay attention to?
Well, I think the message is pretty clear. Everybody got it, how remarkable, successful this operation truly is. I'm stunned by how much we're able to accomplish pretty much on pace. I mean, I knew full well that at day 3, we wanted to have reduced their retaliation capability by 75% in terms of ballistic missiles, and we hit that mark. And now we're up to, as reported, 86%. It's truly remarkable here what we know about the enemy, and because we have such exquisite knowledge about them, that we're able to also to use our combat power and distribute it so effectively and accomplish so much. And when I first saw what we were attempting to achieve, I knew that these were ambitious goals to try to accomplish so much in that period of time. And our people are right on the mark here. The Navy is essentially gone and never did have an Air Force. But the major weapon systems, the ballistic missile is the focus. That's their major conventional system. It can do the most harm because of the lethality of it. They have considerably more drones, but they're not as lethal. And the fact that we've got the drones now down to, they can only at 73% retaliation, we reduced them that much. The drone penetration is around 10%, which is what the ballistic missile penetration is. And you can see out there that the casualties are very light. We know full well what Iran had planned. They had learned a lot of things, Dana, from a 12-day war. And from day 1, they were expecting to unleash massive retaliation on a strike at Israel and our U.S. bases with missiles and with drones. And they were not even able to do that. Remember, on the first day, the report out of the Central Command and the Israelis was a much more weakened response than what they had anticipated. And that had to do with disrupting the chain of command and also us attacking so heavily on that first day against those very targets to reduce their capability to literally to return fire. So we're really on a very good pace here. The Israelis are moving to another phase of the operation. We're going to continue taking away the weapons, and you see us doing that, ballistic missiles, drones, the Navy, and we're also going to systematically take, if you're manufacturing a weapon system in Iran, that's a target. And we're going to take down all of those targets. We don't want them to have anything left at the end, not only in terms of the things that they have on hand to fire, but so they cannot manufacture anything. What the Israelis are going to do, they're going to still focus on some of those targets, but their primary focus is going to be on what? It's the organization. They want to set the conditions for a regime collapse, and that is going to begin in earnest. They did a tremendous job, obviously along with us, in taking down leadership targets, and those will continue. But systematically, they're going to strip away what? The IRGC and its capabilities. That's the people, the organization, the facilities, the infrastructure that supports it. In other words, the networks, the technology, the communication systems, all of it. The same thing with Basel militia, who repress the people. The same thing with intelligence and security forces, who repress the people. The same thing with the police infrastructure that repress the people. Over 1,000 munitions have been hit into Tehran in the last couple of days in doing that, and hundreds more are coming in the next 24 hours. But it's going out to all of the provinces as well, because in those provinces, as we have seen, those protest movements, when they moved into those other cities, there were security forces and police infrastructure that came out on the streets and mowed those people down. Those security forces and infrastructure are going to be stripped away. This is a systematic reduction of the entire infrastructure that does what? It sustains the regime. It is likely going to take more than a week or two just to do what I'm talking about. This is how much of a focus this really is. In other words, at the end of the day, this regime will not have much left to be able to govern or be able to repress its people. That's the intent here.
And General Keane, thank you so much. We do have sirens in Tel Aviv. Trey, I said I would see you later in the day. I didn't know it would be just moments later. Go ahead.
Yep, Dana. Yeah, Dana, right now we have incoming Iranian ballistic missile fire. An early alert went out to phones telling people to head into bomb shelters. And right now there are no interceptions behind me, but it's coming again in what appears to be another coordinated attack between Iran and their Lebanese militant group proxy Hezbollah. We see sirens that are also sounding across northern Israel, some of them along the border. These could be some shorter range rockets that Hezbollah is launching over as the Iranians are firing more ballistic missiles. We heard from General Keane earlier. The Iranians have had their ability to launch these missiles greatly reduced by 86% since the first day of the conflict. And I'm just going to have my cameraman pan out to the sky here. Yaniv, if you look between those clouds off in the distance, you're going to see a white line, and that is from a trail of likely Israel's Arrow 2 or 3 missile defense system. And that white line in between the clouds there, again, that is the interceptor headed up to take down any of the incoming fire toward this city. But again, this appears to be quite a very large alert and an indication that maybe for the third time today, we'll wait for official confirmation from the military, though, that Hezbollah and Iran have tried to launch an attack at the same time, again, to try and overwhelm air defense systems here. Dana?
All right, Trey, stand by or take care. And then, General Keane, I believe that you're still there. Could I ask you about the capabilities of Hezbollah at this moment? Because we know that they did not act on October 7th in that attack on Israel, in which I think Hamas hoped that they would. But I'm curious because after Israel was able to take down many of its military at Hezbollah, or their fighters, through that pager intelligence triumph, what type of capabilities do they have right there in southern Lebanon?
Well, they still have thousands of missiles and rockets, but and they did attack on October the 8th. But what they did is they curbed the use of their missiles, as they're doing right now. And the reason why Hezbollah existed primarily, people think of them as a terrorist organization, and they're certainly that. And they were the ground force in Syria, keep propping up the Assad regime all those years. And when they had to come home after October the 7th, in significant numbers, that Assad regime was put on a pathway to collapse. But the primary reason Iran has sustained this force all of these years is for it to defend Iran and to pummel Israel with missiles that can reach all of their primary cities. They have those missiles. They're not using them. They are just attacking in the north. It remains to be seen if they're going to do that. And certainly what the Iranians are up to, Dana, is they want to distract from Israel's attack on them to devote resources to deal with Hezbollah. The Israelis can deal with Hezbollah quite handily, as we have seen from the outset when they decapitated their leadership. They know where everything is there. They have exquisite intelligence on what's taken place, and they will pummel them and discourage them from actually expanding their operation here. So I don't think Hezbollah is going to be much of a threat to Israel. They're still unless they start to use their long-range missiles. And I doubt if they're going to do that, and the Israelis are likely pounding all of those missiles that are left in any event. The reason why they never responded during the 12-day war was very interesting. Israeli commander, when I asked him, why aren't they firing on day 4? He said, sir, they have thousands of missiles. He said, we've broken their will. They don't want to get into this fight. And I think they're reluctantly in it now, being pushed by the Iranians, because the Iranians literally are fighting for their survival. And I think it's more of a desperate act in what we're seeing.
General Jack Keane, thank you so much for getting us through that breaking news, and much more to come on America's Newsroom as we move along. Thank you. Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube, and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.